Thank you. Yay! Well, I don't want to be a garrulous Toastmaster. Let's go on to our next speaker, who is Lin Van Gelder. Lin is going to be speaking out of Presentation Mastery Level 3, her elective. It's entitled Resilience. It is 5 to 7 minutes. Lin Van Gelder would like to thrive, to feel alive and vibrant in every way, body, mind, and spirit. 2020 has been a year of pandemic, a year filled with political upheaval, civil unrest, ongoing racial tensions, and the additional stress created by isolation and fear. The desire to find ways to cope with these stresses has given Lin much food for thought. In today's speech, Lin will share her personal journey as she survives and thrives in 2020. With resilience, I present Lin Van Gelder.
Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Toastmasters and welcome guests. Seriously, up until this week, I did not realize I could hold my breath for 4 days. When the presidency was finally announced for Joe Biden, I was surprised to find myself so emotional, crying and feeling like I could dare to feel hope again. I am rejoicing. If there's one thing we've learned intimately and perhaps painfully in 2020, we just don't know what's going to happen next. From a global pandemic to killer hornets and asteroids, it's been like watching a science fiction movie to turn on the news this year. And I'll admit that in early March, when we canceled a long-awaited vacation with friends, I was depressed. And I'm not used to it. Depression, I'm just typically an optimist, and I can usually find the good in things. But this pandemic shook me. I spent way too much time thinking about death. What would I do if my husband died? Worse, what would he do if I died? What would happen to our pets and our household full of stuff if we both died? And I found myself dwelling on that and shrinking into dread and feeling terrible. It's terrible to indulge in that morbid, stinking thinking, and it's just not like me. So I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, how do we cope with it when we're feeling despair? What tools do we use to change our mindset to something more positive? And I don't mean false optimism. I mean optimism built on examining with gratitude what has allowed us to get this far. I renewed my promise to myself to keep a daily journal with the idea I would find new things every day to be grateful for. I would tell myself I was born for this. I'm supposed to be here right now. There's only one alternative to getting older. So I took action first. I got my mojo working. I even started a new internet marketing business. Yes, a crazy thing to do in the middle of a pandemic, but it gave me hope, and I needed that. I believe our ability to be resilient no matter what the circumstances are will help us determine not only how we survive this pandemic, but how we learn to live happily in the days ahead. When I was young, I learned a lot about resilience from watching my friend Nancy handle a tragedy in her life. Nancy was a school teacher. She was a business associate. She was married to an aerospace engineer, and they had one little girl. Looked like such a perfect life. However, in an instant, everything changed for them. When Nancy got pregnant with her second child, they were hoping for an easy delivery and a quick trip home from the hospital with their new son. But baby Eric was born with spina bifida, pressure on his brain, numerous medical conditions. He needed 9 brain surgeries. 9 brain surgeries before he was a year old. It was questionable if he would live, and the costs for his medical care, they were astronomical. So this couple couldn't even really grieve about their baby because overnight they were plunged into catastrophic debt, the kind of debt that cannot be managed on a school teacher's or engineer's salary. Years later, Nancy would tell this story, saying at first she wanted to kill herself, that it seemed so overwhelming. But at one point she said no, she was going to find a way to be grateful. That was her belief system. Just be grateful for everything and then take action. She really hated all the programs that social services was offering her to help with her handicapped child. In spite of the fact she was terrified and not a salesperson, she and her husband worked on the part-time marketing business they'd joined a year earlier. Gratitude is at the heart and is the compelling guiding principle to resilience. Nancy hated sales, but she loved her child. She would often say, and I quote, "You will do for love what you would never do for money." They got to be extremely successful, and within a few years they paid off all their medical debt and they took care of all their children's needs. Young Eric was intelligent and funny in spite of his physical challenges, and against all medical advice, Nancy went on to have baby number 3, David, who was physically perfect. Their business was so successful that they eventually could give thousands of wheelchairs to children around the world who were in need. Little David was about 6 when 1,000 of us went on a Caribbean cruise together. I can still see him clinging to Nancy's skirts as we boarded the ship because they had resilience. We have it too. Just look at how Las Vegas responded after a mass shooting. Resilience is how the city of Los Angeles responded after the Northridge earthquake. I'll bet you each one of us, and Heba's in this room and she's a good example, each one of us can come up with 1,000 examples. And we can become examples ourselves by our response to the circumstances we find ourselves in. Resilience lies at the heart of our newly elected president. Read Joe Biden's story. And my hope is for the country that we are resilient and strong as we move into a better future. Thank you, Madam Toastmaster.